So before I introduce our moderator, I just have a housekeeping note. This is a little different format for us in this room. We've never done a plated luncheon here. We usually do box lunches, but we think you all are deserving enough to have lunch on a plate. So there will be a little bit of service and some noise, so just bear that in mind. And now I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Drake, who is going to moderate the discussion on the amazing women in the IC. Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks, Suzanne. So I do want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Chuck and Suzanne and the entire INSA team. And I want to applaud your internship program. It has been phenomenal working with this group to organize today's event. And the program that you guys have put together, really is outstanding because you are attracting top talent. So, congratulations to all of you and thank you so much.
Round of applause for the intern.
So our next panel is titled From a Moment to a Movement, and we are really excited to share with you the story of a grassroots group that we affectionately call the Amazing Women of the IC. And before we get into explaining what that is, I'd like to start by introducing the four amazing women to my left. So first I have Karen Diener, and Karen is the founder and CEO of KD Geospatial Solutions. Karen is a seasoned government consultant and a networking machine. She loves to connect people. And in fact, it was an email from Karen that solidified the first ever AWIC event. And that took place in February of 2015. And her vision continues to foster the sisterhood of this organization. Next, we have Megan Jaffer. And I would say Megan is an organizational management extraordinaire. Megan is a key strategist, consultant, and program implementer. Her substantial experience in business analysis, strategic corporate communications, and managing program deliverables has been a key factor in the success of AWIC, and I think we would all agree that she is definitely what keeps us running. And then we have Tish Long. Tish is the former director of NGA and current INSA chairwoman. Notice I said chairwoman. Tish was the first woman to lead a major U.S. intelligence agency, and her leadership continues to inspire the women and the men of the IC daily. Tish has opened her home to host AWIC events, providing an intimate setting to encourage conversation among our membership. And finally, Ellen McCarthy. Ellen is Vice President of Intelligence and Analytics at Noblis. Ellen also served as the Chief Operating Officer for NGA and as President of INSA. So Ellen is a founding member of AWIC, and she also has opened her home to the group for events, which has really played a valuable role in creating a sense of sisterhood for the group as well. So thank you, ladies. I know we are all excited to share this story with you. So let's start a little bit first with the Amazing Women of the IC mission statement. So Amazing Women is dedicated to the development of professional women serving the U.S. national security mission. Our group brings together amazing women throughout our community to support, empower, and inspire one another at all stages of our careers. So I mentioned that it was an email from Karen that solidified that first event. I was on the receiving end of that email, and I remember it clearly. I was working at the United States Geospatial Intelligence Foundation, USGIF at the time, and if you know Karen at all, sometimes you'll get an email and it's starting in the middle of a conversation. So this email was, so Carrie, Suzanne, you get 10 young women that you know, and Carol and Ellen and I are going to get 20 senior women, and we're going to get together, and Ellen's offered her house, and we're going to do a reverse mentoring event. And at the time, I also only knew Ellen as the COO of NGA. We had probably crossed paths a couple of times, but we'd never really been introduced. And I'm sitting here in front of my computer going, Carrie, me? Did she mean to send me this email? Like, okay. But I was like, all right, fine. I will get these women together. And I was really glad to be a part of that first event. So Karen and Ellen, can you tell us from your side of that email, what was it that prompted you to start AWIC?
So shamelessly, it was actually sitting in a bar after an INSA event, as usual, with a glass of wine and looking at Ellen and saying, I mentor a lot of people, you mentor a lot of people in this room that I know we cared about women, we have cared about doing that through our careers. That we miss the point on different things because we're not able to have, one, a casual enough conversation. Two, people are usually, maybe they're assigned to you, or maybe they get the courage to ask, or someone asks you to do that. And maybe you don't gel with that person, maybe, and they don't even know how to tell you because you've been asked to do it formally. And it came more to, and then even if you have something good inside of you to pass to everybody, you sure don't have everything to pass to anyone. And so I do network a lot. Yes, you all laugh, those that know me, but I thought, you know, I need to use what I do to expose the women, the young women who teach me more than I was teaching them, by the way, to the network of crazy, amazing women that I already knew, who, when they would come and say, wow, it would be really nice if I could meet Ellen one day. I'd sure like to meet Tish. Geez, I wish Sue Gordon would, you know, say hi to me. You have that, and you need to expose it. And so I said, you know, Ellen, I just want to get women together, young women and senior women, and let them naturally share about business and help to promote jobs and learn about each other. And we can't do it at these formal events. So I'm thinking, you know, wine, kind of a Friends of ISR kind of Kevin Miners thing. What can we do? And she goes, well, we can open up my house and we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And then we had another glass of wine and I said, now, I really want to do this. And she said, I really want to open my house and do it. I said, be careful who you're talking to. And I went home and sent that email to Carrie and Suzanne.
Yeah.
And I said, can you guys come up with your best 10? And we'll come up with the other 20 and we'll put 40 people in Ellen's house and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so Ellen, you opened your home to 40 women on a cold February, I think it was raining, evening, right?
I guess it,
Yeah.
It was February.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, so I'd love to say, I mean, you know, Karen is so passionate about the mentoring and this reverse mentoring. You know, I came at it from a little more selfish position. I just like to have fun. And so for me, it really was, and there was a couple glasses of wine involved in this discussion. And I thought, you know, and I love to host parties. But I'll tell you, I also feel very, I've jumped around this community a lot. I've been in a lot of places. And so for me, this community really is a community. I mean, I think I'm very blessed to come from that generation where, I mean, I remember my bosses saying, you are not just a Navy intel specialist, you are an intelligence community officer. And I really believed that. And so the reality was, any chance to get together and drink with my friends from across the community and learn more about them and develop closer relationships with them and make some new friends was going to be great. So I was actually in it for the fun. And so we had about 40 people in my house. It was very cramped because I don't have this estate. But I'll tell you, in some ways, I mean, it was fun. We were all sitting in my living room. It was very tight quarters. We had a couple glasses of wine. And out of that came, I mean, what your great idea, Karen, really led to something so much greater when people like Megan, who I had never even met, said, I want to do more. You know, this is cool. I want to be a part of this. And Tish, I mean, who said, well,
I'll host the next one.
Yeah.
I'll take on the next one. And it was just, it was amazing how out of 40 people in a living room said, you know, we should keep doing this because this is pretty cool.
Yeah, we took time that evening and every single person went around and kind of shared their story. This is what I do. This is one of the challenges that I face. And like Ellen mentioned, Tish and Megan were among the first. I think there were 3 or 4 of you that raised your hand and said, okay, we're going to organize the next event. So at the time it was, we're going to create this reverse mentoring group and we'll get together occasionally. As you'll see through the course of this conversation, that has evolved a bit. So Megan and Tish, from your perspective, what made you raise your hand at that first event to say, let's do the next thing?
So I was actually surprised out of the 40. Well, I also was shocked that I was invited. I'm still shocked, and I've been working with these women for 3 years that I'm sitting up here. And I'm very close with all these women now, but I'm still shocked. I was surprised at, you know, Tish had offered up her home, but we were looking for 2 junior women to do the planning and the logistics. And there were only 2 of us that raised our hands. And it was me and one other woman. Her name was Heather Crody. She's not here today. And I thought for sure the entire room was going to raise their hand, and it was just us two. So we ended up, I did it because I wanted to be involved, and this was, I felt like the opportunity that women that were in this room are asking you to, put yourself forward. And so I raised my hand, and I think a week later, Heather and I sat down with Karen, and we had a plan. We said, okay, this is what, we'll go to her and we'll say, these are our ideas, and this is how we'll, implement them. And so passively, we present this information to her, and she started laughing, and she said, do you think I want to do this? She said, of course you can do this. Of course you can plan this. I wanted to bring the idea to you, but I want you to do it. And off we went. And the next event was at Tish's.
And so Megan sent me an email with, hey, this is what we're thinking. And I said, great, go do. So we had probably about 40 women again at the second event. And at this point, they were the reverse mentoring networking happy hours. And I thought I would put just one little piece of structure around it. As everyone walked through the door, I said hello, introduced myself if I didn't know them, and I said, I want you to meet 3 new people tonight, and I want you to follow up with at least one of them. That's all you have to do, and of course, you have to have fun. I mean, I came to the event because Ellen asked me to come to the first one, and because I am all about mentoring, and I am all about helping other women and men. And so I was happy to do the second event, but I wanted to see where could we take this, hence the meet 3 new people and then follow up. And I think probably at about that point, we started talking about the monthly networking happy hours, which, I don't know, I'll just put it out there. You're probably going to talk more about it later, Carrie. First Tuesday of every month at Circa in Arlington from 5 to 7 p.m. We tried it at a couple of different venues around Arlington, and we've just kind of decided on that. But, that evening, again, unstructured, a lot of good introductions being made and relationships already forming.
So can I just follow on? When we first got started, we had no idea really what we were doing. We were just, we thought, okay, well, let's have another one. Let's have another one. And I think at Tish's house, we sat together and we said, okay, what can we do? I often give an example of my husband, who's worked in the IC for 20 years, and he has never once had to apply for a job. He's always been brought along. And we sat together and said, we need to be doing this for each other. So how are they doing this? How are the men doing this? Because they've got it right. They're promoting each other and bringing each other along. And I think it was Ellen or Karen who said, well, most of the business is not done in the office. It's done outside of the office at dinners and happy hours. So why don't we...
On the golf course.
And on the golf course. So why don't we have one place, a meeting place, once a month, where everyone knows where it is, what time it is, knowing that people can't make it every month because they have other obligations, but they always know it's there. And so that's kind of how it started.
Yeah.
So, I mentioned we're grassroots, we're self-organizing. We have a planning team, many represented here. How did that evolve? And then let's take that conversation into, we started with 40 women, and now our list reaches nearly 500 in 3 years. Self-organizing, right? We don't have a sponsor. So how does the planning committee work to help evolve AWIC, and how are we reaching those 500 women?
Well, I'll tell you that So Megan and Carrie, you play a big part in us keeping organized and keeping together and keeping on point. But I think our success has been that we regularly engage with our colleagues to get a sense of, do we want to keep going? Mm-hmm. What do we want to be? Who do we want to look like? And so that first year, we actually hosted an unconference. Mm-hmm. And it was at Army Navy Country Club. It really was our first, it was really our first sort of big, okay, we all felt like we had something here, but we really wanted to see, do we really have something? And if it is, where should we go? And Carmen Medina, who's part of our planning committee, played an incredible role in helping sort of collect information from, at the time, there was probably a couple hundred people on our list. I mean, it grew very quickly. And we actually asked our I can't say membership, because we're really, it's sort of, we're all AWIC, so we just asked our community of women, what do you think? And we got some pretty incredible feedback, which helped sort of drive us to, okay, what do we want to do moving forward? I mean, if there's a theme here, it's that we're very agile, we're very adaptable, and we're always asking ourselves every year, do we want to keep doing this? Do we want to move ahead? Do we want to, and what do we want to do if we do? Out of that first unconference came 2 or 3 subjects that the folks that were attending that event said, we want to delve deeper into this, and that helped drive us to sort of target what we were going to do over the course of the next year. And
it really did. So Carmen set us up just with some polling software. So I mean, that first unconference, and we've done 3 of those now. We do them at the end of the year or the beginning of the year to plan out the next year. And it's just polling, and then we all pretty much coalesce around what are the topics of interest. So the subsequent events were really, the topics were planned for us. As a planning committee, who's going to speak? Will it be a keynote? Will it be a panel? Where are we going to do it? So we've had events here in this room where one of our planning committee members, Michelle Rosa, I think, moderated the first panel.
And Sue was on it.
It was on work-life balance.
And it was on work-life balance. Effective strategies to manage work-life balance. And Sue Gordon was on it, and we had a junior woman from NSA and someone from, I think, academia. And we've done, so we've done several events here. We've done more events in our homes. Those, of course, are a little smaller. They're more intimate. But, when you can have Teresa Carlson, Vice President of Public Sector from Amazon Web Services in your backyard to talk about knowing your worth, how to negotiate, knowing your worth. That's pretty cool. And so that's what our network brings, and we all bring something different to it.
So I just wanted to say a little bit about the planning committee itself.
Sure.
And that is that what we really tried to do is, this is all about our community or our membership. And what we constantly do, because people rotate off, people come on, they have life, they have jobs, they can't put forth the effort that they might have been able to the year before. And we really try, to mimic what our membership is like. So, at first I think we had 10 committee members, 5 of them senior, 5 of them junior, and we tried to be as diverse as possible as far as, their job and where they worked in the IC and things of that nature. And then, once we started adding people onto the committee, we looked at, okay, what are we missing? What do we need? So we have great planners and we have great seniors who can get us wonderful speakers, but now we need technology. We want to be able to maybe do a website, or we want to, dabble into social media. So we need a committee member like that. And so that's kind of the organic way that we run the committee.
Right, and we've been approached by a couple of different things. So we've got the planning committee organizing the events. We're taking the lead from the membership on what are the topics we want to cover. But there's other outreach. There's the newsletter, and someone stands up and takes charge of that. Karen, you're based in California. We've got a small group of women that have gotten together in California We have a group in Maryland. And then we have pop-up events, which, Ellen, those are your favorite. Talk about the pop-up events, Ellen.
There's this underlying theme, though. At the end of the day, it's all about providing opportunities for women to get together, for our group to get together, to continue networking. I mean, I think we should highlight that it's actually working, and I think that's why we're here in our 3rd year. But you have people who've decided to go to graduate school. You've had people who've gotten jobs as a result of AWIC. I mean, I know that I have actually recruited 2 AWIC people to come work with me. People who've gotten married, people who've gotten divorced even because of AWIC.
Because of AWIC? No.
But my point is that this is all about developing relationships. This is all about creating our own network. And so we can't lose sight of that. It started as reverse mentoring, and it just became so much more. So why do I think the pop-up events are my favorite? In fact, we're working a pop-up right now, which I haven't even shared with my colleagues here, and more to follow on that one. But I like them because they're small. And so what we do, it can be anything. My favorite pop-up event is the Ask Me Anything event. And that's where we get somebody in this room to come and be willing to sit down in front of her colleagues and take on any question. Any question. And believe me, some of these questions are pretty darn interesting. And so that's the event that we've got coming up in Ask Me Anything. So it tends to be a smaller group, 10, 12 people, which is about as many as you want if you want to start developing relationships and friendships. And the person who does this is very brave because we ask some very interesting questions. But there's a whole lot of other pop-up events. And the reality is that any one of you can say, you know what, I want to do wine tasting. And you send us a note. We send the event out to our membership, and the next thing you know, you're hosting wine tasting in your house, or I want to do hot yoga, or I want to play golf, or I want to do a book, and so this is an incredible resource, and what we need from our membership is to say, I feel like doing something, and we just had a wine tasting event not too long ago in somebody's home, so.
I think the cool thing about our group is that there's 2 sides of it, right? So, we started as a reverse mentoring group. It was kind of professional development group, but that's not only what we are. So you get that with our panels and our keynote speakers and our
the quarterly
events, our unconference to an extent. But, what we really try to promote is how are we, we have to get to know each other as people, and I think the first panel, someone mentioned that as well. And that's why we do these pop-up events and we do these happy hours, because we need to support and promote each other outside of the job as well. So, I know that, Jane Doe just moved to Reston, and I know that, Jane Smith lives in Reston. Oh, you should talk to Jane Smith, and she can give you a realtor and a dentist and, what have you. So then you get to know these people, and then you can, from your heart, when a job comes up, say, oh, I know her, she would be great for that. I know her on a personal level, and here's her resume. So it's a little bit of both, and I think that's why when you come to our events and you come to our happy hours, it's not the typical DC happy hour with, oh, where do you work and what can you do for me? We do want to know where you work because it's interesting, but it is more, what do you do for fun? Where do you live? How many kids do you have? Would you like to do a pop-up event?
And we want to know what we can do for you.
Right. Yeah, Karen, being based on the West Coast, you're not the only, we have another Karen on the planning team who's also on the West Coast. How has it been, we do primarily have our events here, but what has AWIC provided and the ability to kind of reach back to DC when you're not in the region?
So that's an interesting question. I was here for a couple of years when we started AWIC, so I was at every event that we had, and now I work my schedule to try on the 1 week a month that I'm back to be at our events. But what's happened is there's a huge explosion no matter where you go if anybody finds out about AWIC. There isn't a single woman I work with, whether it's in Silicon Valley, Alaska, the work I do is mostly on that coast now, Los Angeles. Well, we want to do something like this. Which is the success. So I think you go back, it's like they don't want to have to be a 501c3. They don't want someone to have to do paperwork. They just want to have a way to get together without it being such a big deal. And I want to mention, even though we really do fun things, and it's really great, and it's everything we've said, but there is an important factor about bringing women together constantly to talk about our lives, but then work. When we're talking and everybody says, boy, the guys just kind of bring each other up and it's sort of natural. There have been studies shown that, and these are not things that even guys are trained on. They're better at sitting around together and talking about business. How do you run a company? You're not going to be a CEO if you don't understand, profit and loss, or what were your mistakes. They talk about that stuff. And we tended as women to not be in a situation to do very much of that. And we never really asked the guys unless it was an individual one-on-one. So this was a way to try to naturally have, Tish, can you share with us how you actually got there? Or Ellen, when you bounced back and forth, what happened? But real topics come up from that as well. How do you become somebody that's in a C level of a company? Well, you can't. Ladies, it doesn't matter how hard you work. If you don't have the bottom line in your mind for that company, no board is bringing you on at a C level position. And so there's that, but then how do you help people to know that? You expose them to women who've become CEOs, heads of agencies, because the conversation becomes natural of how they got there. And it's really important for all of us, and myself included, to keep learning how success does follow you. So.
I think those natural conversations have been some of the best moments at AWIC events. We recently, I think just 2 weeks ago, had one on championing change with Stacey Dixon. And I think we had some of the most engaging conversation from the participants, talking about how do we support one another? What if someone says something that is offensive to someone else in a meeting, and how do you have the courage to step up and defend that person? And I mean, there was a great conversation around that. That's been one of my favorite moments. I'd love for you guys to share your favorite or most impactful outcome from AWIC, whether that's been at an event or a connection. I know that you each have stories. Who wants to start?
I'll start. And I will say it's not just one new relationship or one event or one specific. It's the broader thirst or hunger for these events, which, and we've heard this a little bit here already this morning, and Mary, you talked a little bit about this. I mean, when I started in the intelligence community, and for the first almost 12 years, I was never in a room with another woman. I had no female supervisors. I had no women mentors. My mentors and sponsors were fabulous. They were all men. I wouldn't have made it to where I did without them. And they opened a lot of doors, and we had some really good conversations. But the conversations are different. I mean, let's face it. The conversations are different than, a young woman engineer with 5 brothers, who's in an office full of men. Once in a while, you just want to talk to a woman. And so I never had an opportunity for something like this when I was that junior in my career. I mean, yes, Karen, and you made a good point. There are a lot of structured events, but nothing unstructured, right, if I can use that term in a positive way. And I think what has struck me is that there is still as much a need, a want, and a desire for networking like this today for women at all levels as there was 37 years ago when I started in this business. And one thing I would add, so I think that for me is just kind of my big aha. And I really enjoy all of the learning and the new relationships and the networking, you know, from my perspective also. And on the pop-up events, I do enjoy the men that have had the courage to come, as men are invited to our events.
You know, to add to your point, Tish, I felt really good when Sue Gordon talked about how the male component is so crazy important, because I actually think that was one of the foundational elements to AWIC. So it was not about creating a club of women who are going to sit here and be, you know, she-man men haters. You know, that's not one of us here. And so it really was about taking a cue from the men that we've worked with and the men that we've had as mentors. And I mean, one of our first events was how do we communicate in the boardroom? That was another event that we had a couple of summers ago. How do we do this? How do we take a sheet from that playbook? Because we're going to work with men, and like Tish, I mean, I had the great, I was incredibly blessed, because I got to tell you, I have never been a person who's been involved in a situation where, for whatever reason, I've been discriminated against. I've never had that experience. I am very blessed. But what I did notice that happened, and one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about AWIC today, was when I wanted to make that move from GS15 to senior executive. That move didn't happen because I was good at my job. It happened because there was a couple of women, one of which was standing here, who was willing to take me on as a sponsor, and who was willing to actively engage on my behalf, whether it was a phone call or walking into an office and saying, I think we should do this. And that's how it happened. And it really struck me then that all the amazing men I had got me to where I was, but it really was a woman who made that phone call and got me in. And I really think that AWIC is a chance where we can take all women, take a sheet out of the male playbook, and start sponsoring one another and start helping one another. And you'll find that there will be 0 AWIC events that are going to talk about how we're better than men. We haven't had one. Don't think that's going to go there. I love men, and
You're married to a good one. That's there's a reason.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, you know, Ellen just laid out, you know, that she was kind of sponsored and, you know, and given her opportunity, and she did that for me. And so I'm forever grateful for this group, because she gave me one of the best opportunities I think I will ever have working in the IC. And she knew me from this, but really didn't know me from Adam. And you know, I got to see firsthand what an amazing leader is. And I will forever strive to be a leader like her. So that's what I would take away from this group A. 2, as far as an event, I think, you know, to piggyback off what you were saying, one of our events was Women Leaders, What Men Really Think. And we had a panel of 3 men. One was the CEO of a defense contractor, one was a former director of an intel agency, and one was a Navy, I think he was a captain who wrote a book on how men should mentor women. And these men were very brave. They sat up on a panel just like this, and we got to ask them any question we wanted. And they were so honest, and I think one thing I took away from that was, and it was the leader of the intel agency, he said, be yourself. You know, don't be afraid to be a woman. If you need to cry, you can cry. When people say, don't cry, don't cry, he said, I've had men come into my room and cry. So I think that was the key takeaway that I got from that event.
So I love Megan's story. I've watched different mentorships start up with people that didn't know each other. I'd like to thank a lot of you in the audience. I look over at Mantech and Yvonne, and I can specifically say that I've been able to reach out to the network, and these companies open their doors to make a special point of interviewing people that are looking to get in, you know, just like Ellen does, and they're not even on our board. Because that's the thing that shows it's contagious. When people see other people doing this, they go, oh my gosh, I never even, hey, I can help. It is off of that contagiousness that we continue, I feel. And actually, I'll go back. Sue's not here. I'll say that she was at our Life Balance panel. If you have not ever heard Sue's story, by the way, please ask her the next time you see her. It's a fantastic story, and one that would let you know you can be a mom, and you can have a career, and you can have these different things. You maybe can't have them all at the same time, but it's about being true to yourself. So her, you can see that in her, right? We asked her to come to that. That was one of our first events, one of our first panels. Nobody knew who we were, what AWIC. So do you think her staff actually was going to send her to this? Of course they're not. They're like, well, you got WIT over here and maybe women in aerospace. Maybe we'll give you up for a little time to something. So we actually, I actually called her and I said, I know your staff's having you go to all these different things. Really need you to come to this because it's really about grassroots of, young professional women and this and that. And Liz Lines made sure she got there. And do you know that it wasn't less than at least 5 times after that day. That night, Sue was really tired. She made sure she got there. She went to every table because she was so excited to meet every young woman in that room. And she came up every 10 minutes and said, oh my gosh, thank you for having me come. Thank you so much. These women are so great. And it just energized her. So we get so energized by each other, but the senior women that you think are just here because we ask them and because they're being nice, no. We're here because it's just fascinating how much energy you put back into us and how much you give to us by letting us hear you talk of new ideas. And it's great, and that's what I love to take away. I think every one of our seniors that's ever spoke has come afterwards and said, I love this. I met so-and-so. I met these women are so great. So you did that, Mary.
I was going to say.
And Mary's still here with us. So
and you know what I'm always surprised, I'm going to call you out a little bit, I hope you don't mind, is that I send out the emails, the distribution list. So when we have an event, I'll send something out saying, it's either our invitation or a reminder. And you almost always respond, whether you're coming or not. And you'll say, when she's not coming, she says, I really wish I could come, but I just can't make this one. And it just, every time I receive your email, it makes me feel happy because these are the senior women. You would think, oh, they don't care about this stuff. Like they probably look at it and delete it. And it's really, it's important. Thank you.
I mean, that's what it's been, when we look at that list, so much of this is on a personal level, right? So we all, we went through the bios today of what everyone is currently working on, but I wanted to add when I was writing the introductions that I'm going to touch on what everybody's doing in their work life, but the reality is we're here representing AWIC today, and that's so much of what AWIC represents is that personal piece of your work life, right? It's that safe space for us to get together and have a real conversation, as we mentioned. It's not, we will have a panel or a speaker and we'll moderate it a bit, but then we open that conversation to whatever, strikes the mood. I'll add my favorite story too. When we had our bias conversation, how do we overcome
Bias.
Yeah, unconscious bias. And I walked into that, I was like, yes, we're gonna get some tips about how do you stand up and say, you're wrong. No, that's not what it was. It was about, everything in that room was about, look, the only thing you can control is you. How do you take this information in and react to it in a way that will be positive for you and for the other people? And I walked away with that completely different than I thought I would. But I was really appreciative of being able to have that conversation. And all of these things are coming from the membership. What do we want to talk about? What do we want to hear? What do we want to learn? We also talked about the intimate setting a bit. We host probably 50 or 60% of our events in someone's home. Do you think that that's been a bonus, or have we had any drawbacks to that, or maybe a little of both?
I'd like to ask the audience.
Yeah.
I would like to see how many people in this group have went to an AWIC event. Wow.
Oh, yay.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, the rest of you will.
Because we know who you are.
Right.
So one of you that raised your hand, like Tish said, could you say a positive and maybe a negative of hosting it at someone's home?
Okay, so I'll comment on that. My name is Tish Tucker. I attended a pop-up wine tasting at the home, thank you, of two sisters that were junior officers in our community. And they had just bought a townhouse together because it's expensive to live in our area. And it was around the holiday time, and I had like 15 minutes to myself between hosting family, holiday shopping, work, responsibilities, and I said, I'm going to go to this event. And I found the townhouse, and when I came in, I think, Megan, you were there that night. I was by far the oldest woman there. And I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like such a, fish out of water here. I'm not going to fit in. And within like 5 minutes, I was sitting down. Has anybody seen Bad Moms?
Oh, yeah.
It was a very fun night. I walked away. It was very fun. I walked away with 3 emails, business cards, phone numbers, and I actually did follow up with a couple of young women that were there with their resumes to help put them in touch with intern programs. And so it was a great night. I wasn't planning on it. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I'd been to some of the other happy hours and events, but that one in particular was my favorite event. And it was in their home. It was very, very intimate.
Thank you for sharing that.
So yeah.
Edna Reed from JMU. I was at a competition, Capture the Flag, at Virginia Military Institute about 2 years ago, and I met Megan. And we had a nice conversation, and she invited me to come with some of my JMU students. So we came, I think it was at Ellen's house with the swimming pool, and it was a workshop. And oftentimes when I go to events and I don't know people, some people will come up and speak, and some people will only talk to each other. But at this event, people were very friendly. And I liked the idea that there were senior people networking with junior people, because I had one of my students with me, and she left feeling very connected, especially since she was a recent graduate. But after working for about 40 years and going to something like that, I feel as if the IC has come a long way. Because I went to the CIA in the 80s, and there weren't a lot of women in professional positions, especially not women who look like me. So to have this kind of informal network, I think will be very helpful to a lot of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, this is great. It's a great transition, because I had a couple of questions, but we're ready to open this up to the audience. We want to hear from you guys, and maybe it's going to be a little bit of me asking you a question really quickly. One thing to think about, and what we'd love your feedback on, is what else can a group like this do for you? And so that we can call this a little bit of our own, unconference continued, so we can take that back to our group. But I see a couple of hands. Wait, we'll start here.
So I was introduced to AWIC, I don't know, probably a year and a half or 2 years ago. And at the same time, we had a small group, I'm from Northrop Grumman, we had a small group of women who were having some issues in the workplace, some minor harassment things, and they came to me and they said, what do we do? So I said, well, let's go have coffee, let's talk about it. So we had a similar journey to you, in that we started very small. It was just 3 people, 4 people at coffee, and then it sort of exploded. But it was knowing that you were there. Then we actually met you at GeoInt. We brought these women and we introduced them to Tish. But I think what I want you to think about is a little bit is all the lives you've touched. recently there was an article about teachers and how they've touched all these lives. And if you look at the map, so it's not only the person that you do something for, but it's the person that does something for, how that kind of travels along and the impacts you have. So now we're up to about 50 people. We meet monthly. We call it Tech Chat. But we struggled with a name. We really liked yours, but we couldn't steal it. But anyway, I think it's just been tremendously positive. So I wanted to, we looked at you and looked what you were attempting, and we pulled women together. And some of these women are at sites sprinkled all around, the Beltway, where they are the only women on a program. So it was really useful to bind them all together. And your comment about pulling them together in a social way to where they really knew each other. And then you've seen all these women, go to do some pretty amazing things. So I wanted to make that comment because I think there are opportunities, and back to your question, I think each company, we need to provide affinity groups or opportunities for women to get together to combat problems like we did, or to network. I mean, I guess the list is endless, but I just wanted to make that comment because I think sometimes each of you don't think about that, sort of that traveling impact across the globe, because it is really huge.
To your comment, I'm so glad to hear you're doing that because I think that really is the spirit of AWIC. So I think, and one reason why we've had this discussion about do we want to, become 501c3, do we want to move on? We have that discussion every year because there are benefits to that. But there's also the but, which is the reality is that any one of you can set up an AWIC. I mean, it just took one person and a couple glasses of wine. And people who are passionate about this, to make it go. I mean, anybody can do it. We talked about the Maryland event, which was a couple of women out at NSA who had reached out to Tish and I think to Megan, and it was at the Green Turtle out near NSA, and I think they were expecting like 50 women. There was like 500 women. The Green Turtle ran out of glassware, and, because there were so many people there. They were it was busting out the doors. But it really just took a couple of women who said, hey, we want to do this. We want to see how you did it. They did it. And I think on the West Coast, it's kind of been the same thing. Karen, they've reached out to you. Any one of you can set up your own AWIC-like organization. And it just takes passion. It just takes a desire to get some folks together. And I think that shows that we're a success if we're actually...
and we can help you.
We're happy to,
we're
happy to help.
We can help you. That's what happened with the Maryland event and with California, is that we gave them, just kind of a shell or bare bones tools as to how we do this. But the magic is really in the people. So we've had a couple of stories like yours at other companies who've started small women's groups within their companies, and we would love to help you, give you ideas or support or anything. Just reach out to us. We would be happy to do that. That's what we're about.
Go over here. And we'll go there and then there.
Hi, Jen Savada on the last panel. A couple years ago, I started a Women in Intel group for the Air Force of the DC area. I would love to set up a collision between you guys and us because we have so many women that want to continue service, but they can no longer just tolerate being in the military. 1, 2, they can't make it work with their family, whatever it may be, but they don't know where to go. They don't know what to do besides take the job that they're offered below the salary that they should be, below their skill level, in order to try to stay in the community that they love.
We love collisions,
Yeah.
don't we? Like collisions?
So I just wanted to say, this is more logistical. Out by the registration desk, we have a sign-up sheet that you can put your name and email address if you'd like to be added to our listserv. So if you have something like that you'd like to do, put a little note next to your name, and then we'll reach out to you directly, and we can make it happen.
So I saw a hand over here, and then I saw a gentleman over here.
So, Nicole, first of all, I would say one of the things that we did that I thought was very beneficial was a skills workshop. Those skills are translatable to the entire workforce. And those who taught those workshops, all three were women, could also give some very specific recommendations or some very specific examples. For instance, and Jen, I'll play off something you said. So it's something I say all the time when I'm talking to a group of people. Don't take yourself out of the running. Yeah. And I often use, the 51%, and the guy says, I'm in there, I got it, it's a slam dunk, and the woman has 9 of 10. I just don't have that one last technical characteristic. And then I go on and say, and how many of you have hired people before? How many of you have written position descriptions? How many? Yeah. Do they really reflect what you're looking for? Usually not. Or, you've got group dynamics, you've got team dynamics, and so you want as many applicants so you can get that best athlete. But so that is a piece of advice that is good for everyone. Don't take yourself out of the running. Don't decide that you're not qualified because you're not the selecting official. It is really applicable to women because for whatever reason, the way we've been raised, the unconscious bias, the way we're reacting to ourselves when we read that position description or that vacancy announcement, and we are more often than not going to take ourselves out of the running. There are lots of examples of that across skills, that these skills are beneficial to everyone. You can also tailor them some for various groups. And I'll take it way beyond gender. I'm an engineer, so I can talk about, communication skills. We all need good communication skills. For some engineers, that's a step too far. Or for some analysts, that's a step too far. Well, you're not getting to the C-suite if you don't have good communication skills. Again, it can be a general workshop. There can be examples that are tailored to certain audiences. Mary, you looked like you wanted to add something.
I wanted to address something that I think we don't talk about necessarily, but you reminded me of it, and maybe this gets to your question. How do you have a group inside a team that identifies around a certain characteristic without making the rest of the people uncomfortable? Like it's a plot. And the military has, as long as it's been male-dominated, women have struggled to say, we do need to get together to support each other because our problems and issues are different. And we have to help the men understand that, well, you have the golf course. We have to have these opportunities where no holds barred, no rank, no position. We've got to have a safe space where we can talk about things. And the great news is men, when you talk to leaders, they get that at some level. They understand the importance of diversity and inclusion. They're not sure how to get us out of our own way. And when we go back to them and talk to them about the ROCKS organization, which is a grassroots organization started by African American leaders in the military to help African Americans in the military succeed in a white male organization because it is essential that this happen and other groups happen. The first time you think about it, if you're not self-identified by that, is why do they need a special group? Let's have a conversation about that. They need a special group because we want them to succeed, and they need to have the ability to trust the conversations that only they can have. And ROCKS was the first time I ever, as a young officer, thought about, wow, it's so important for me as a white woman to support ROCKS because I want to see a military that represents all of us. It's so important that women in intel in the services do not hide in the group of the 90% men and be afraid to go to the group that you've established to help get their confidence level so they get out of their own way and you can connect them to other people. And I think this is something, as you've talked about it, is when the men decided and the woman decided we were going to make all positions open, it was an amazing thing that happened in the Army, that non-commissioned officers, males, combat arms said, we need to have support groups established for women at the lowest levels to be able to talk to women like me who have made it. And if they want to invite us, great. But we want sisterhood organizations where they can support each other, because we don't understand what's going on at the hospital when they can't get healthcare appointments. We don't understand why they're not able, when they're dual deployed, to figure out the healthcare thing, because the male's certainly not raising this issue. And so we've got to understand the impact of groups like ours and enlist the help of the white male or the ruling authorities to say, come to this group and understand what it's going to be. You're going to get a more confident employee. And I try to, when I tell people about WIC or tell people about getting involved in support groups that will help you understand where you're starting, I always like to have the conversation that a female colonel, God bless her, MP, probably the only one in her generation, reached out to me in this organization of mostly men, and she said, there's one woman in every branch. You, Captain, need to get the woman together. And I said, ma'am, why? And she said, because the power of the network you're going to create as captains to support one another when you want to kill the guy working next to you for the bad joke you made, for the sexist remark that went down, for the racist remark. You've got to develop some power in your group. And it was interesting when you talk to intel people or signal people, they were like, okay, we're all in. But if you went down to the engineer branch, where they're 1% women, they were afraid to come. Because the judgment that would be made from the men is, why do you want to go self-identify as a soldier, as a woman? You're a soldier first. Well, that's easy for you to say. So I think we do need to think about it, because I hear in your voice, like, should we get together and should this be a factor in discussing promotion? Well, let's not be surprised if women are at a certain percentage of the leadership. If we're not having the conversation all the time, all the way, let's not be surprised why African Americans are not well represented in the IC. If we don't have explicit conversations, if groups like ours don't bring those issues up, then it's really easy to forget. And it's not that there's malign men out there, but they're busy doing the mission and they're forgetting they have an obligation to lead all of us. So I do think that, Jen, brave of you to do that. And the great news is those kinds of groups are being sponsored by men and women in the military today, because we want to get the conversation right. Brave that at a time when integration, still a difficult issue, was a difficult issue, that African American leaders refused to take no for an answer and created an organization that had led us to Colin Powell and led us to that next generation. But we take it now to the C-suite that says, hey, we're the group, we'd like to have you come in, hear us. Let's not just talk to ourselves, let's hear us and hold ourselves responsible to the goals we've all established for ourselves. Representation in a country that is about equality. A meritocracy. It's not there yet, but if we don't talk about it, it's never going to be there.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, gentleman over here first, and then we'll come back over here.
Hi, my name is Marcel Lette, and I'm a leader at Lockheed Martin for the past year or so. Before that, I had a little under 20 years in government. One of my last jobs was as the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, which was a great privilege to serve there and with a lot of friends in the room here. I guess I want to just take advantage of the expertise on the panel to ask maybe for some ideas and to share a little bit of advice for leaders of organizations around the themes of diversity and inclusion generally, but the importance of supporting women more specifically. First, what I'd like to say is a concept that I've found really interesting as I think my way through these issues is the idea of headwinds and tailwinds, and how and I saw this firsthand in pretty much any organization I've worked in or led. Parts of the organization, team members in the organization, some of them face headwinds that make it really challenging to move forward and succeed in the organization, and others face tailwinds that just make it a little bit easier structurally. And congratulations to you guys first on thinking through the concept and the mechanics of AWIC and doing what I think is a really important informal task of essentially creating those tailwinds for women across the IC, which sounds like it has been very helpful for a lot of people, and I appreciate the chance to learn about it today. Now, maybe the question is, have you all gained insights from that work for leaders of organizations to try to tackle that same challenge, creating tailwinds for individuals or groups of team members who face headwinds? I was struck by Sue Gordon's comment earlier about how one ill thought through comment or action in a negative sense can undermine all of the good work of a well-meaning leader. And I'd turn that around. I guess I'd also say that especially in organizations where leaders are only there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, they don't have a lot of time, how do you think of 1 or 2 things that they can do that are positive, that have that ripple effect, that can really fundamentally move the ball forward or catalyze that shift for individuals of the team to have tailwinds instead of headwinds? And so, long-winded way of asking for your thoughts and advice based on the experiences you've had as leaders or as managers of teams. Can you point to ideas that are fairly specific and could have that ripple effect if implemented correctly? So, and thanks again for helping us understand the work of AWIC. It's a neat initiative that you guys have pulled together.
Thanks, Marcel. So I would say certainly, again, building on something I said earlier, that it has struck me that there is still such a need, a thirst, a hunger for this safe space that we have created. And so you asked for something concrete. I think what any leader can do, wherever they are in their organization, is create that safe space for the conversation and encourage the conversation. It's not enough to simply say, we need to have this conversation. We need to also then create the environment where everyone feels they can participate in that conversation without a fear of retaliation, without a fear of legal action, without any kind of fear that this is a conversation that you as a leader want to have, that you as a leader start the conversation. At the end of the day, it's about being a better organization. It is about enabling everyone to rise to their full capability and capacity and to develop them and help them develop to that level. And so it's creating that space, it's encouraging the conversation, it's modeling the conversation. And then it's follow through. It's follow through when you get that input, you get those ideas. It's the follow through to ensure that everyone knows that you're serious about it. And then I think the last point I would say, which is where this all started, it's connecting the more junior members to the more senior members so that they have somebody they can talk with.
Yeah. And I just wanted to point out, I think it's great that you're here. I think that sets an example. That's something that you're showing people that you think that this is an important conversation. So if you continue to show up for things, you're leading the way in that manner. And I actually recently just read an article about culture and how in the workplace and how a lot of companies will say they do this, but then they don't provide the resources to folks. So it's one thing to say that you encourage it, it's another to actually provide the outlet. So making sure that you're saying, hey, here's a number of groups you could get involved with. I know somebody here, let me connect you. Now you know all of us, right? I think that that's a really important
Or
thing.
encouraging them to, you know, if you're in a senior leadership position, you should, you know, be encouraging your folks to be attending these types of events,
Right.
men and women, and telling the men in your groups, this is for men too, not just for women. And, you know, I'm guilty of this myself because I sit here and I see the men in this room and I'm upset with myself that I didn't tell my husband to come because he's a leader in the IC and he should be in this room. And so I think that's the other thing is, and one more thing is that, you know, you have to provide the resources for them to come. So you have to provide the time and the hours for them to attend these types of events.
You know, my suggestion is going to cost $0, though. My suggestion is how you show up as a leader. And I will tell you, the one thing I learned when I was at NGA, Tish, was that you surrounded yourself with people and you were open to feedback. So the minute you take on a leadership position, if you think you're going to be the smartest person in the agency or in the room or in the office, you've already failed.
I never am, and I know it.
So, I
really
really believe that the thing that will help the most is you being open as a leader. I don't care if you're a branch chief, I don't care if you're a director of an agency. It's telling your colleagues that I need your feedback, and then providing an environment whereby they can say to you, you know, Ellen, you did not sound good. You know, when Sue made the comment about what her dad had said, you know, I'm sure he didn't mean that. I mean, I'm positive he didn't mean that. But the reality is that I want to know. I want somebody who's going to be honest enough to come to me that said, do you realize you just ignored that person? Because 9 times out of 10, I'm horrified that I've done something like that. But I think just as a leadership challenge, you know, whenever you move into an organization, surround yourself with people that fill in your weak spots. And then be open to the feedback they provide you as a leader. And I think if you can do that, all this other stuff is going to work itself out.
We have 5 minutes. I want to take one more question. This lady in the blue has had her hand up for a while. Oh, okay. And
Suzanne.
And Suzanne.
And so if you're not the one bringing that talent to the organization, who else is going to do that? And as a leader, you shore up that person by talking about them throughout the organization so that other people can get buy-in on why you chose this person. I ran a $300 million P&L division, and I had 5 program managers under me. And I put 2 people of color out of 5. And my husband works there too, and he said, you got to stop. You're getting the perception across the organization that you're only picking at people of color. But, right, think about what that says, but I was giving people a chance that deserved it, right? Thinking about diversity of thought in the organization. And it wasn't my boss, he was good with it, right? It was just other people in the organization, and how do we prepare the organization to accept people who are different? And once these people got into the organization, they killed it. And people were asking, where can I find some more people like that, right? They're in the organization, but as a leader, we have to help them show up in the right way. And don't be afraid to be that person. She picked a woman. I took over in the cyber intelligence. Ginger knows I only hired women. And that was not because I said I was only going to hire women. It's because the women showed up and they interviewed with a diverse panel, and we all said, that's the person, together. But we got that buy-in, and I made sure everybody knew it was a diverse panel We all picked it, leaders in the organization, and that helped make my leadership team stronger. And so don't be afraid to be that person. I'm always going to look out and say, where is there a diverse candidate that I can choose to give a chance, as long as they're qualified for the job. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Suzanne Heckenberg, INSA, I'll be succinct. You mentioned, what did the group want to hear from AWIC as far as upcoming events and topics go? But can you comment on the next 6 or 9 months, what you all have planned? I know Ellen mentioned a pop-up event. And then I wanted to ask each of the panelists, red or white?
Well, as far as red or white goes, it depends on the season, right? So, I mean, if it's warm weather, it's white, and if it's cold, it's red. But that's all I'll add. We kind of operate on a month-to-month basis. We have a weekly call, and we say, we hit the target that's right in front of us, right? So what's coming up next, ladies? Yeah.
So you want me to go ahead? Okay. Yeah. So we always have a lot going on. We have our monthly happy hours, first Tuesday of every month. Quarterly, we are now hosting happy hours in Maryland. All of these things that I'm announcing you would get an email about if you're on our listserv. We haven't decided when our next, we just had a quarterly panel up to 2 weeks ago. We haven't decided if we're going to have one in the middle of the summer or if we want to wait till the end of the summer. We are trying to figure that out in the next week or so. As we discussed earlier, we decide the topics for the year from our unconference, and our membership are the people who tell us what they want. So we have, our last one was diversity and leadership. I can't think off the top of my head what the next one's going to be. However, it'll be in the next 3 or 4 months.
Women in technology, so we're watching your panel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, we try to do pop-ups once a month. So we have those coming.
Well, I've got one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to announce it?
So I do. I haven't announced it yet. We'll do it right now. So Yvette Nantes, for those of you who don't know Yvette, DIA, is actually volunteered to host a Ask Me Anything event. And Mary Quinn, also formerly of DIA, has volunteered to be our subject.
Oh, great.
And I would have had it in my house, except my house looks like a train wreck right now.
But the date is, when did we say the date was? June? Watch out for it. I haven't even told you about this.
June.
But in June, yeah.
Great. So if you're interested, as I said earlier, we have a sign-up sheet out by registration. You will know that you're on the distribution list when you receive a welcome letter, and it tells you a little bit about our background and who we are and what we do. Along with some previous newsletters that we've written. We do those quarterly as well. That one is going to go out shortly, so you can see what the first half of the year looks like. And that's...
And red or white?
Red.
Yes.
Always?
No, well then rosé.
Yeah. Bubbles.
Really.
Yeah, no, for me, it's, Suzanne, for me, it's good wine. It can be red or white.
That sounded like a better answer, so I'll just say that.
Champagne. Yeah. You didn't answer. Red.
Yes.
Red.
Yes.
Yes.
One thing about the newsletter really quickly is we love it when people want to actually write an article that we put in it to share your story. So I guess the other thing I love is when we've had pop-ups or we've had pop-ups at USJF or at an INSA, and we discover that a woman in the group has gotten an award or won some, event or technology
big promotion,
anything, man, we get on a table and clap. And we want to know those things, and we'll put them in the newsletter. We want you to share a good mentorship story, or what did you get from AWIC? We want to do this all the time that helps us with the newsletter. So anytime someone wants to talk about something, and we're not having an event, we get it in the newsletter.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I just want to close quickly. Thank you guys so much. It's fun to be up here with my friends. And I'm a true believer in networking. It is incredibly valuable. And so many times I've been in a room where I'm like, why am I here with these people getting to hear about their story? And then I want to bring somebody along so that they have that opportunity as well. And AWIC is no different. Women are facing a lot of the same issues in every field, right? But one of the things that's unique to the IC is that we often do it in secret due to the nature of our roles. And so AWIC has provided an opportunity and will continue to provide an opportunity for women to get together kind of in a safe space where people understand the nature of your work and they understand that you can't elaborate on a certain topic or where you were that day or whatever that is, but they also still understand the challenges that you're facing. One of my favorite sayings is that behind every successful woman, there is a tribe of successful women who have her back. AWIC is that tribe for the IC. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie.
So, Suzanne, it's not red or white, it's the new rosés, right? Okay.
Also seasonal.
Okay, so thank you, Carrie, Karen, Megan, Tish, and Ellen. I was going to ask them to repeat some things, but I think they've done it. Listserv sign up is out there, okay? And you'll get the word about the happy hours and so forth, and you don't have to sign up for them. You just show up, right?
Just show up.
Just show up.
Okay, so it's lunchtime. Okay, lunchtime sponsored by Boeing, thank you. Also is going to include a presentation by our friends and partner, the Spy Museum, with a mother, daughter, sister spy panel discussion, which ought to be really fun, okay? But hold in place. Please don't rush out because some servers are going to rush in, okay, with plates of food and platters for serving family style at your tables. So enjoy your lunch, enjoy the discussion, and thank our panelists again.